How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Got another great video coming with the RM250 today. We're gonna be pulling apart the wheels back here, and I've got some really cool plans with them. I'm excited. Let's get to work. All right, the wheels look like they're in pretty decent condition. I don't see any cracks or major damage. Obviously got a lot of scrapes from tire changes over the years. That's pretty normal. Hubs look pretty solid too. Now the big thing to look out for on wheels are damage to the rims. So cracks from a large impact, it'll be on the side of the rim here, and they'll actually flare out as well from impact. And for the hubs, make sure the mounting holes for the sprocket are not all augered out. That happens when your sprocket bolts get loose and you keep riding it, just shifts back and forth and wears that out. And for spokes, commonly they'll be loose, bent, broken. Spokes are kind of a wear item anyways, and along with bearings too. I'm just going to replace those. At least we've got good hubs. The rims look like they're pretty solid. I should be able to reuse those. And maybe the spokes too. We'll see once we start ripping into them. I'm gonna go after the front wheel first, and let's get the tire ripped off here. So I like to do my tire changes on a tire changing stand, or you could just use a bucket, but I really like the stand because it gets everything off the floor. This one is from Tusk. I'll have it linked down below, as well as the tire irons I'll be using right here. These things are nice and trusty. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with tire changes, but the process I use is I'll take the valve stem core out, get all the air out of the tube, loosen up the rim lock, take the tire off of one side of the rim, get it over the bead or over the side of the rim, flip it over, do the same thing, and from that point you just smack it on the ground and you can just pull the rim right out of the tire at that point. I'm always up for a little challenge, so let's throw a timer on it and see how long it takes me. Let's go. That wasn't too bad. Definitely could have done a little quicker. I got caught up on that valve stem for a little bit, but that was a good little workout. All right, now we got the rear. Now obviously these are a little bit longer than the front because they're more tire to work with. So once you get to the end of the tire on both sides, just put your lever in between, kind of push that out, get a good gap right here. And once you get the rim outside the tire, just pull upward and out, and it'll come right out. Okay, we are ready to pull these down to the hubs. Now one thing about rim locks I noticed on these are cracking out. At that point, just throw them away. They're pretty cheap to replace anyways. And I'm actually going to pull the bearings and seals out of the hubs before I start messing with the spokes. I'll be using a blind bearing puller for this. These are super handy to have. A mistake I've made in the past with these bearing pullers is having it too deep in the bearing and actually going into the spacer. And at that point you chew up the spacer really bad. The spacer is the sleeve inside in between the bearings. Most bearing kits don't come with that spacer, so you want to keep it in as good a shape as possible. So once your puller's in there, just snug it up by hand and then tug on it a little bit, get it toward the bearing, get it hooked on the bearing, and then tighten up the nuts here. And then just give her the berries. Pretty slick. And this is that spacer I was talking about. If you get that puller too deep in here, I'll go inside of here and just chew the inside of it up. Now the only thing different about the rear is the sprocket side is going to have two bearings instead of one. And if these bearings are a little stubborn, you can use some heat with a torch to help slide them out. Not a bad idea to do it anyways. These bearings were definitely in need of some replacement. I would classify these ones as crusty. They didn't spin too good either. Now we're ready to separate the hub from the rim. Gonna take out all the spokes. The quickest way to do that is to grab some cutters or a cutoff wheel, cut all those spokes, and you're good. However, this is gonna be more of a budget type build, and I'm gonna try to salvage these spokes if possible. So I'm gonna loosen up the spoke nipples with the spoke wrench first, and then grab a flathead on the impact, and that should spin the nipples loose pretty quick. Now before you take the wheel all the way apart, always a good idea to take some pictures, or even better yet, some videos of the spoke pattern, and also which side of the rim is facing which way. There'll usually be a stamping here, right there. You can correlate that to a certain side of the hub. So yeah, just a quick way to save some headache down the road. All the spokes are loose, and at this point we should have nipples just falling out all over the place. If not, just give it a little shake. Pretty much just separate the hub from the rim at this point. Oh, there's a couple stubborn nipples here. Gonna have to give them a little bit more attention. There we go. Now I'm gonna pull some spokes out of the hub and see if we have any different length spokes here or different angled heads. Most wheels will have two different types of spokes. The ones on this side look the same, and the ones on the opposite side look the same length and same angle on the head as well. So we can pretty much just pull all the spokes off this hub and not have to worry about organizing them. Good news on the front wheel. Hub looks plenty usable. Spokes are all in good shape. A little dull and corroded. They just need a little shining up. Rim actually looks to be pretty solid too. You want to look really close around the lip here. Like I was saying earlier, sometimes those cracks are really hard to notice unless you're up close and personal with it. However, as you can see, there is a little bit of gap there as it sits on the table. It doesn't sit perfectly flat. I'll have to look closer into that. This side, yeah, a little bit of gap too. It might just have a little flare. Oh, there it is right there. See a little bit of flare on the rim. I'll show you how to take care of that. Sometimes if you hold them up in the light, you can see where it's kind of flared out. Right there's another one. That is definitely fixable though. Now there's a couple different schools of thought when it comes to rebuilding wheels. Most people will toss the rim and the spokes and just save the hub, reuse that. I've done that most of the time. However, you can get away with reusing a lot of this. The purpose of this build is to show you guys how cheaply you can build a bike with just reusing and refurbishing a lot of the parts. Now, as far as the spokes go, you can get away with reusing them as long as they're not all bent up and don't have damaged threads. You can always just clean them up, re-zinc them, or just polish up the existing zinc on them. For the rim, these are plenty usable as long as they are not out of round. At that point, you just want to grab a new rim. However, if you have a crack, you can always weld it. If you have a little bend or flare, like I call it, like right there, I just noticed that earlier. Now, bending back a rim sounds pretty sketchy, doesn't it? But it is a pretty common deal in the automotive industry, and even like with street bikes and stuff. There's a lot of wheel repair shops around that do that kind of work, and honestly, they bend back wheels of much less quality than these ones, and they're always fine. I've actually had it done on vehicles of mine before, and they've always been good. And with the wheels I've bent back when I was a kid and I had no money to get new wheels, they've always been fine. And so I hope you guys will appreciate this little money saving hack and just a way to refurbish your old rims. What I've found that works best so far is just on the ground with a hammer, a block of wood, and some heat. I also tried using a press and using the vise. And what seems to make the most sense here is just using impact to bend this back. I mean, if you think about it, the rims were bent by impact, and aluminum is also very malleable. So in my opinion, impact is gonna work much better than just using pressure. Got it marked out where the bend is in the rim. Take a look at that before I get hammering on it. So I'm just gonna heat this up with a torch and get pounding. So I was able to fine tune my high-tech bending method here, and I just had 2 blocks of wood, one like that, and whacked on it. Seemed to do a really good job. Got the rim back up on the table. Let's see how flat it sits. I don't really feel any gaps anywhere. You can also look here at the bottom. Obviously you want to make sure your table's perfectly flat, but looks like we only have just a little slight gap right there, but that's a heck of a lot better than it was before. Check the other side. This seems pretty good too. This side's even better. I think we saved this rim from the scrap pile. Now, where this stuff will really come in handy is on an older bike where you can't get a rim anymore, or like I was saying earlier, when you're on a budget. So hope you guys found this little experiment pretty helpful. All right, it's on to the rear wheel. I'm gonna rip this one apart and check everything out as well. If you have spokes that are seized up on the nipple like this one, doesn't want to spin, just grab a torch, give it some heat. You might hear it crackle and pop a little bit as you heat it up, but usually that'll loosen it up. And for the spokes that are really stuck, I like to add 2 pairs of vice grips, keep that thing from spinning. I know this is getting a little out of hand, but I'm just trying to save a few bucks and show you guys what's possible. Honestly, this wheel was in pretty rough shape. About half the spokes were seized, and I was really tempted just to cut them and be done with it, but I was able to get them all loosened up. And the wheel's pretty scratched up. It's got a few little bends as well, but I am gonna try to nurse this one back to health. The rims are all straightened out. Honestly, I'm really surprised how well these straightened out. I didn't think they were gonna look this good. But now obviously we got all of these scrapes in the rims we're gonna have to smooth out, so that is the next task. Now to smooth out all these scrapes and scratches, I'll be using an 80 grit flap wheel here on the bench grinder. Let's see if we can make this thing look halfway decent again. It is actually looking really good. We should have no problem getting this rim looking like new again. I was able to get the entire face along with the inner lip here smoothed out. I still got to do the very inner. There was a couple scrapes in there, but I got both sides done in about 25 minutes, so not bad at all. After the 80 grit, it would be wise to follow it up with 180 and maybe even 320 because the 80 grit's pretty rough. You can feel it. It's a pretty rough finish, and any anodizing or coating over this is going to show through. After hitting it with 180 and 320 grit, got the rim looking pretty smooth. Honestly, if your rim isn't all scratched up and pitted like this one was, you could just start with 180 and finish it with 320. Now for all the scratches inside the rim, I'm gonna use a die grinder with a rough cleaning wheel on it. Not too bad at all, looking pretty solid. So at this point the rim is 100% scrape free, and the last thing I need to do here is to take a hand brush and just brush it to get the outside consistent here. So once I'm finished up with these rims, I'm gonna drop them off for anodizing, and basically whatever the finish is below, that's going to show through the anodizing. So obviously you don't want an inconsistent finish or scrapes or gouges. That's the whole purpose why we went through this process of cleaning this up. Also, if you have a brush finish, that'll even show through the anodizing too, and it'll look pretty good. You could even do a chrome mirror look and anodize over it. I've seen that before. It's a pretty cool look. Not my style, but I think the brushed will look pretty sweet when it's all done. And I can't forget about the outside of the rim here. That's looking pretty nasty. Damn, that is sexy. Let's get the front done. Here's a little before, and here is after. Honestly, this is my first time ever restoring a pair of rims. Pretty dang stoked on how they turned out. So if I can figure it out, you guys can definitely tackle a project like this too. So in total, I used these 5 wheels. I used the 80 grit wheel first to remove the scratches, although on the front wheel, I just went right to 180 because the scratches are pretty minimal. Followed it up with a 320. For the inside of the rim right here, I used a mini rough wheel to remove the scratches on a die grinder. And for the outside, I used the rough wheel on the bench grinder. I will have all these linked down below. Now, I'd be pretty reckless if I didn't talk about this subject. I know it's pretty boring, but you gotta protect yourself, especially when you're working with aluminum. Those bits getting into your lungs and your bloodstream are not good at all. So at the very least, wear something like this along with some safety glasses. Something with a bigger filter is nice. If you want to step it up a little bit, get something like this unit. It's pretty cool with eye protection built in. It uses the same type of filters and seals a lot better to your face. I wore one of these for a long time before I got one of the PAPR versions. This has a big hood that goes on your head, seals against your face perfectly, and has a filter that goes around your waist. This thing is like having personal AC. It's pretty sweet, but definitely not necessary. So at the very least, like I was saying, grab something like this. You're gonna be a lot better off getting one of these compared to just your flimsy little disposable mask. I think by now we all know those are pretty useless. They have a ton of air gaps and the filtration quality is just terrible on them. So I think these are maybe $30 at Home Depot, $35, something like that. And this subject is pretty close to me because I am a cancer survivor, so I know firsthand it definitely pays to protect yourself. At this point, the rims are all done and ready for anodizing. Now, if you wanted to leave your rims bare like this, which I think looks pretty good, you definitely could. It would take more upkeep though. You're gonna have to rebrush them every so often. However, you could do a clear Cerakote or a nano ceramic to help protect them. But in my opinion, anodizing is the way to go on rims. Next up, let's move on to the spokes. Get these cleaned up and see if they're salvageable. Now, when looking at these spokes, they are pretty rough looking. It appears the zinc plating has been eaten through by corrosion, so it wouldn't be possible just to polish them up and reuse them. They're just gonna rust or corrode again. So they're gonna have to be stripped all the way down and re-zinced. So while I'm at it with stripping those down, I'm gonna clean up the spoke nipples as well. You guys gotta check these things out. It's unbelievable how well they cleaned up. Wish I could just leave them like that. They would just rust right away though. So I'm gonna have the spokes themselves zinc plated. I'm gonna leave the nipples just how they are, bare aluminum. They'll be fine. Now, just like anodizing, the surface underneath matters a whole lot. It determines the finish and the quality of the zinc. That's why I spent the time and brushed these up, got them looking good. Now, the quickest way I found to do that is with a combination of 2 different wheels. I used the rough wheel on the majority of the spoke, especially on the rears. Those are really corroded. You don't want to use this wheel on the threads or the spoke nipple. It's a little too abrasive for that. And that is where the fine wheel is really nice. It doesn't harm the threads or the spoke nipple. So I will have these linked down below for you guys that are interested. Now I need to get these fork tubes ready for anodizing as well. I need to strip the existing anodizing off. Now there's a few different ways to approach this. You could use a drain cleaner with lye in it. You could use an acid aluminum cleaner. There's probably other chemicals that'll strip it too. However, with those methods, you gotta fully immerse the part into that chemical and it'll strip all the anodizing off. But unfortunately on these fork tubes, we gotta keep the anodizing on the inside, gotta keep the coating on the inside. That's really crucial for the function of the forks. If we strip that, the forks won't work too good because it's those bushings that slide up and down inside there. So we only need to strip the anodizing on the outside here. And so you guessed it, I am gonna use abrasives for this. It's what I know best. And I think we could clean that up pretty quickly without harming these tubes at all. So let's give it a shot. Alrighty, here we are. Tubes are done. Just gotta finish them up by hand, but they are looking pretty good. What's nice about this is you can smooth out any scratches while you're at it, and really didn't take too long. I want to say about 20 minutes a tube. Now there is a certain technique I've found that works pretty good. You want to use the side of the wheel and not the edge. So just like this, and you always want to be moving against that wheel. You don't want to keep it spinning in one spot. It'll kind of wear into that tube. So you really want to keep the shape of the tube. You don't want to have it deformed at all. It'll be really noticeable. So be pretty light with the pressure. And like I said, always be moving. Now for the majority of it, I use the fine grade 6-inch wheel. If you want to speed it up a little bit, you can use the rough grade wheel. Although I wouldn't recommend it unless you have a really steady hand with buffing and you've used these wheels before. You can dig into the aluminum pretty quick with this wheel. So just like the fine one, you want to use only the edge of it, and you got to be super light with the pressure. Just do not let that dig in. And once you're done with the rough grade wheel, switch over to the fine wheel and you'll end up with a sweet finish like this. All right, let's finish this one up by hand. It's looking a little janky. Hey, I just got an idea. Let's step it up a little bit. Oh my gosh, that is unreal. Look at that, guys. Now that I think about it, you could just grab your impact, spin this thing with a cap, and then just hold a piece of sandpaper on here to strip that anodizing. These tubes are gonna look absolutely wicked as soon as they're anodized. Can't wait. Now, a couple more pointers when it comes to sanding these. You wanna do it in a well-ventilated area or just outside. You don't wanna be breathing in those particles from the anodizing or the aluminum. And like I said earlier, make sure you wear a good respirator along with some safety glasses. One last batch of parts to clean up here. So while I am at it with the zinc plating on the spokes, figure I'd do all the hardware at the same time. Now, how most plating shops work, you just bring in a whole batch and they charge the same price, no matter whether it's just a few bolts or a whole pile. And the shop I use charges around 100. That'll include all these bolts along with all the spokes. So not a bad deal. I have the ability to zinc plate here, but I just find it's more cost and time effective to have a big shop do it, especially with this amount of hardware. I'm sure some of you are wondering, why not just buy new bolts from Suzuki? Well, some of it's not available or it's really expensive. For example, one axle is going to run you $80 to $100, and by the time you add up all this hardware new, you're a couple $100s deep, if not even close to $1,000. So a lot cheaper just to have it replated. It's always crazy to see how well this stuff cleans up for being 20 years old. I even went a little overboard on some of these parts. Cleaned up all of the casting marks on the Kickstarter knuckle. Smoothed out the heads of the axles. Cleaned that up with a flap wheel. Got that looking nice and sharp. So just like the spokes, I used these two wheels here. Use the rough wheel for the majority of the bolts to knock off that rust, the corrosion, and the zinc plating, and the finer wheel for the threads and the final finish. So I got a little too carried away today with polishing up my shafts and my nuts and my nipples over here, and I kind of ran out of time to get to the hubs. I was really hoping to knock these out today and lay down some Cerakote, so that is gonna have to wait for the next video. So stay posted for that. Got some cool stuff coming with those. Well, I'm gonna end the video right here. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I had a lot of fun with this one. There was a lot of new things I'd never done before with the wheels and the forks. It was interesting experimenting with those things and seeing what worked and what didn't. And it was really cool to share that with you guys too. So hope you guys took something away from it. If you did, please give it a share or just tell someone about it that you think would enjoy this type of content. But man, I'm just having a ton of fun producing these videos again. It is much needed. I just feel like it's my calling, and I'm happy to share all this stuff with you guys. So anyways, thanks again for watching, and I will catch you next time.